getting into the national conversation of Pinkster. What is Pinkster? It predates Juneteenth as a national holiday for African Americans in this country. We're going to get into it right here on The Frequency. Welcome to another great conversation on The Frequency. I'm your host, Dee Barnes. Thank you guys for tuning in. Okay, my guest today, this woman is incredible. She is a cultural activist working with trans art, and she helped create the national conversation for Pinkster. Pinkster predates Juneteenth. Now, I didn't know this, so we're getting ready to get into it. She's going to break down all the details about this because I am so fascinated to know about what Pinkster is and what it represents. Also getting into the nonprofit work she does with trans art. Please welcome my guest, Greer Smith. Greer.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. It's so nice to meet you.
So nice to meet you too. Thank you for coming on. There's so much to get into. I really want to know about, we're going to talk about Pinkster. We're going to talk about trans art, but I want to know what led you on your path to activism.
Well, first of all, I didn't look at it as activism. Growing up, when I grew up, a teenager in the 60s, it was a fertile period in our time.
Right.
There was music and other people were doing the real heavy lifting in terms of activism. And I was fortunate enough to be growing up in Brooklyn, New York.
Oh, yes.
Which I feel like is the center of the universe. And growing up in Brooklyn and going to Jane's United Methodist Church, my sheroes were people that were doing it. My aunt Shirley Chisholm, she wasn't my biological aunt.
Right.
I come from a time where we didn't call our parents, friends, and people over 30. We didn't call them by their first names. They were auntie.
That's right.
And Auntie Shirley was, I had Sunday dinners, after church, after choir rehearsal. So I saw her and could talk to her. And so there was no reason for me not to turn out the way that I've turned out and be interested in what I'm interested in because I saw it every day.
What are some of the things that you are interested in?
The music, our history, our culture, what Black women have done. I was fortunate enough to go to private school in the beginning of my education. And there's a woman by the name of Dorothy Bostic that started the Little Red Schoolhouse in Brooklyn. Which turned into Junior Academy. And a shout out to anybody that went to Junior Academy because we were doing what people were doing. It was back then, it was Black History, it was Black Negro History Week. Black History Month, but I could do things, we could pick who we wanted to be. One year I was Toussaint Louverture.
Wow.
And if anybody knows anything about our history, first of all, Toussaint Louverture was not African American,
right?
And he was a man, and there was nobody to tell me you could not be him and do what he did. So all the way along with my upbringing, I was always not in that box.
Right.
So, here I am now.
I love it. Okay, so let's talk about trans art. Because what is it exactly?
Trans Art is a nonprofit arts organization that started in Brooklyn, and it started as a traveling exhibition service. At the time, I just left the New Muse Community Museum of Brooklyn as being executive director, and people were calling me about some exhibitions that we had mounted, and there was no vehicle to make them available to people. So Trans Art is basically a traveling exhibition service where exhibitions could travel to smaller cultural institutions, schools, libraries. We would make exhibitions that we organized available so they could travel. Now what we do, because it has other connotations that it didn't have 25 years ago, we talk about the transformation, the trans art being able to transform people's lives. So we talk about the transformative power of art and culture all the time.
And when you say you went to different schools, was it like, did it elementary, high school, all of them, colleges?
All of the above, libraries, those kinds of things. Yes. Right. The exhibitions are available for travel.
What were the different exhibitions, for example?
The most popular one was the one on African antiquities. We work with Professor Rosalind Jeffries. Most people would know Rosalind and Leonard Jeffries as a dynamic cultural duo out of New York. And those exhibitions really got the most play because we don't know about this. Other people have been telling our stories for so long. When we have the opportunity to find people that tell our stories, it's an easy sell.
Definitely. What do you think about the arts kind of being like squeezed out of the curriculum in schools? They don't, do you know what I mean? Like the function of like just simple things like arts and crafts and painting and learning art history. Well,
that's where we come in. That speaks to the necessity for having folks outside that can tell our stories. I was fortunate enough to go to school when that wasn't happening. I still remember music appreciation and what that does. We cannot allow that to happen, but we've got so many other fights going on there. We have to support then folks like me and all of us out here that are in this cultural ecosystem. Make sure that we are funded, we are supported, and people, the keepers of the flame, which is what I call us, that we are consistently supported.
Definitely. When you say keepers of the flame, you're talking about us passing down, like telling our stories, basically. Mm-hmm. That's another thing, too, that's happening now currently with the banning of books and the banning of our history. How does trans art kind of battle that problem right now?
We battle the fact that
it's a battle everywhere. Everything we do is a battle, right?
Yes, that our culture, our heritage, our history is being gentrified at every corner, and we don't get we don't get the opportunity in many cases to tell it. When we look at large metropolitan cities, there are more places and spaces for people to occupy and do things. We've got some big things going on, particularly in Brooklyn now. The Brooklyn Museum of Art just finished with an African fashion exhibition, and they've got the Spike Lee exhibit up now. And we know that Jay-Z is at the Brooklyn Public Library with a massive exhibition going on now. But then when you leave, we're everywhere. We're just not in Brooklyn and Manhattan and in Chicago and in LA. We occupy spaces across this country. And I sit in a space now where it's essential that I have the ability to tell our stories, particularly when so much of our history has happened where I am.
Wow. Well, thank you for your work that you do. It's incredible. We're going to take a quick break, and then I want to get back into the music because you do some things with music too. So we'll be back right here on The Frequency.
Black Star Network is
no punch.
A real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we see
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
There's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Back right here on The Frequency. I'm your host, Dee Barnes, and my special guest, Greer Smith. We were getting into all of the cultural arts, and you really made me think during the break about music appreciation. I, for one, definitely grew up in that era where we had, music in our schools, which I see now, especially when, as my youngest one, who Gen Z just graduated recently, they didn't have a lot of music and arts. They did have a drama department, but I'm saying, like, as far as the culturalness of the music, like even learning history of music. And in particular, you worked with jazz, called the Jazz Hero, actually. Tell me about that, because I know that that's something that's not taught in schools, the history of jazz, where it comes from. It's an African-American culture that we started it basically, along with other genres of music that stem from African-Americans. But tell me your background with the jazz.
Well, basically, you can't talk about jazz and whatever you want to call it. Miles Davis called it black music. You can't talk about it, without talking about the history of this country. It is integral to the continuum that is Western popular culture and popular music. So if we look at it in that context, you understand why it's so important. My being attached to it is because, again, growing up in Brooklyn, it was all around me, but also my aunts and my uncles. That's what I heard.
Right.
Aretha Franklin's first album on Atlantic was basically jazz, and many people don't know that. And I think jazz, and there's a big debate now among musicians. Jazz catches a bad rap because they think it's head music, and you have to be in a smoke-filled room in the bottom of a club. No, that's not it. And we've been able
Hollywood version of it.
Yes, and we've been able to. My team and I've been able to present it now for 23 years. There are not a lot of Black people that are presenters, and there are not a lot of Black women that are presenters. And I stand with them and the struggle that we have, because it's the gentrification of our culture is real.
It really is. When you say your team, is this part of TransArt?
Yes. TransArt is an arts organization. One of our programs, just like Pinkster, is Jazz in the Valley. It started in Ahmad Jamal, the late great icon, jazz master. Ahmad Jamal lived in this area, and because I don't know any better, I just walk up and ask people things. So I trust.
Right, no guess, no glory. You got to be brave, and you were just talking about that.
Only thing you can say is no. That's all you can say is no.
Right.
And I
walk up to Amal.
Yes, because he was a Muslim, and one of my friends went to the same masjid, and I did, I was introduced. He didn't know I was going to go all the way live, but after hello, I was right in there. So, and he said yes. And the first concert that we did was an afternoon of music and jazz with music and art, with Ahmad Jamal, and that was in 2000. And we've been rolling ever since. And I've got to say that the jazz musicians themselves, I could not have lasted all of this time without their consciousness, without their appreciation, without them being really pleased that a sister is out there doing this. And I've been fortunate enough to have Ron Carter, Randy Weston, Hugh Masekela, and on and on and on. And that was something. That was a day.
Oh my God, it's history right there. Look at that. I'm looking at that. Okay. Who else? Who else have you had?
Oh, now you're gonna make me look.
You know what? You made me think of it's wild. During a college course that I took, I remember we had an assignment to see, and it was so weird that she was there, Sarah Vaughan.
Yeah.
And I did it for the college, but I have been a fan ever since. I am so grateful that I listened to my teacher, Black woman, and told me to go see this woman, live, because here she was at our school, community college at the time, and performing. And I was just like, I couldn't believe it. It wasn't even sold out like it should have been, but it was, pretty packed. But to witness her was incredible. And I listened to a lot of jazz in the household, but mostly, a lot of R&B and things of that nature. But to see her live, so I think it's important for a lot of the children to at least get some type of exposure with that.
Absolutely. And we've been fortunate enough to be able to bring some of the musicians into the public schools in this area in the Hudson Valley. And when people walk up to me after and say, Miss Smith, that's jazz. I didn't know that was jazz. I like that. You can't, good music is good music, no matter what you call it. And it's done right. And jazz in particular is about feeling.
Right.
It was meant to be acoustic, and it was meant to be felt. And when you put it in those kinds of environments, it does what it's supposed to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Who are we looking at right there?
That's Miss Sharonay Wade. She won the Sarah Vaughan Vocalist Contest back in the early aughts. Yes.
Wow. Yeah. That's wild that I just brought up Sarah Vaughan. I didn't even think about that. That's amazing. Okay, I have to ask, since my background is hip hop. What do you think about the music today with the kids, and hip hop in particular, from where it started? Because I know your roots was in Brooklyn, to what's presented now in rap music.
Well, the unfortunate thing is, like everything else, when there's money involved, when there's a lot of money on the table, our stuff gets co-opted. Mm-hmm. And how it started and where it has landed leaves a lot to be desired. Wow. And we know in the beginning, we had Roy Ayers at Jazz in the Valley. And, Roy Ayers has been sampled all throughout the beginning of hip hop.
All throughout the beginning, yeah.
Folks, and folks don't know that. But the other piece of it is hip hop started out, it was intelligent. Mm-hmm. When you look at Nas and of course Nas's dad, I've known, we need to talk about him at the next show about Oludara, but and folks like that, you can hear the lyricism, you can hear. Now when you talk to folks, I was talking to someone that we both know, and they were trying to do something, and they were talking to a younger group about KRS-One, and they didn't know who he was. How can you say you're a hip hop head and you don't know who KRS-One is?
Right. That goes back to the history where we were talking about, like, we're not telling our story.
No, we are not. And we've got to look at who's controlling the industry. I keep bringing this up about the gentrification of our culture. I don't use that word lightly. We usually talk about gentrification when we're talking about housing, but you know, our stuff is being bought and sold every day, and other people are representing. For example, it was last year when at the Grammys, the the group from oh shucks, it's not the reggae group that won, you know, was from Australia or something. And
that's right. I totally forgot about that.
You know, we have to, and I wanted to, if you can indulge me a minute,
right?
Our great poet, because we're talking about hip hop, Langston Hughes. Mm-hmm. He did a poem on it's called "The Note on Commercial Theater," and he said, "You've taken my blues and gone. You sing them on Broadway, and you sing them in Hollywood Bowl, and you mix them up with symphonies, and you fixed them so they don't sound like me. Mm-hmm. Yet you done taken my blues and gone. You also took my spirituals and gone. You put me in Macbeth and Carmen Jones and all kinds of swing Mikados and in everything but what's about me. But someday somebody stand up and talk about me and write about me, Black and beautiful, and sing about me and put on plays about me. I reckon it'll be me myself. Yes, it'll be me." And Langston wrote that decades ago.
There you go. You are so right. That's the foundation. And I know a lot of people that are not even up on Langston Hughes, especially people that's rapping.
Yeah, so that's why. Thank you for letting me sneak that in.
No, I'm glad you snuck that in. That's perfect. You made me think about, and I like Langston Hughes too, but I didn't even think about him as far as hip hop and the poetry in itself. I mean, that's how I got into hip hop. That's how I got into rap, but reading poetry and seeing, you know, you just made me think about a lot. Okay, listen, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, you just made me think about all of the you know, African Americans and the culture that we have birthed and created here in you know, in America. And we have to talk about Pinkster. So when we come back, we're going to get into that right here on The Frequency.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, you're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Black Star Network is here.
It's a real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Welcome back to The Frequency with my guest, Greer Smith, and we're talking about now Pinkster. If you haven't heard, Pinkster predated Juneteenth as a national holiday celebrated by African Americans in this country. So bringing back my guest, Ms. Greer Smith. Thank you, sister, for coming on today and breaking this down. This really just really made me like, feel ashamed because I didn't know. And it angered me too, because our history, like you were saying earlier, has been so co-opted and watered down and now buried. I did not know this until I did a little research when I first heard it. And we just had Juneteenth become, officially a national holiday. So I want to talk about the difference in that and your feelings about that also becoming a national holiday. But first, please tell us about Pinkster.
Well, Pinkster was a holiday that is a holiday that the Dutch celebrated Pinkster, which is during Pentecost, and people that grew up in the Christian church know that Pentecost is 50 days after Easter, and the belief is that the Holy Spirit came down, and there was a week of feast because of his coming back to the planet. So the week of feast for the Dutch slaveholders in the state of New York, they felt benevolent enough to let their captives, the enslaved Africans that they brought over to do the work, they gave them the week off. And during that
week? Wow.
A whole week. But during that week, as we are wont to do, we do what we do best, which is why for Pinkster, I thought it was necessary for us to talk about what that meant, and how New York State in particular had been often left out of the narrative when they talk about slavery in this country.
Right.
We talk about everything that happens in the South, but people forget that New York State, the center of the financial world, what was their product? What was going on? Slavery.
Slavery. Wow.
So you can't talk about it without talking about what was going on in New York State and talking about the Dutch and when they settled New Amsterdam, who came with them. So by the 1700s, folks were here. There were more Blacks in New York State than they were in the South at one point in time. So New York has a lot to do with the history and the systems in this country, and we need to talk about that. So me living here now in the Mid-Hudson Valley, I thought it was necessary to talk about, in terms of the culture, what that was. Right. And I'd like to take credit for reintroducing this to this, but I can't.
Conversation.
Yeah, because many moons ago, there's what was virtually a plantation in historic Phillipsburg, which is in New York along the Hudson River. Pearl Primus and Chief Hawthorne Bay were practitioners of African dance and music, and they worked with them in celebrating and talking about Pinkster and what the African presence meant to the development of this country. So I then, and hopefully your audience knows about Pearl Primus, choreographer, anthropologist, who really introduced African dance and all of its beauty to this country and made it people understand that it was worthy of further study because of what it was.
Right.
Chief Hawthorne Bay, percussionist, master percussionist, played with jazz musicians, but also when Olatunji came in the 60s, in that album, that seminal album, Drums of Passion, there were 3 drummers. Sounded like a group of 30, but it was 3 drummers, and they were all African American. That was Chief Hawthorne Bay, Taiwo Duvall, and Montego Joe. So Pinkster, reintroducing this is part of that continuum and making it contemporary. And also, when you live in an area that has no industry, cultural tourism is something that's real. and that's the fastest growing portion of the tourism dollar, and we need to lay claim to it, and that's what Pinkster does. And during Pinkster, back to your original question, during Pinkster, African captives were given that week off, and during that time, we celebrated in the way that we celebrate our lives,
right.
our spirit, who we are. And of course, the Dutch, like the Europeans, seeing what we do. Well, what we were doing was far more exciting than what they were doing, and it morphed into a total African celebration.
Right. Okay. So, in comparisons to Juneteenth, and why do you? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I don't like to compare it because it's a total different thing.
Right.
I just personally would have liked to see this country give us the George Floyd Policing Act and the John Lewis Act, the way they gave us this
holiday.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. That infuriates me so much. We always get trinkets.
I call it a sugar cookie.
Distractions from the actual things that we need instead of justice. We get parties.
But Pinkster not only celebrates us as a culture, but it also celebrates Sojourner Truth.
How so?
Because Sojourner Truth, symbol of the Black warrior woman spirit that has moved us as a culture, as a country forward, and in no small measure, her being a suffragette, showing by example what it takes to live under the systems that brought us, our ancestors here. She could not be celebrated enough, and Pinkster was something that she enjoyed, and it's documented, and she talked about it. She was an excellent dancer.
Right.
So I wanted us to reclaim her, because Europeans had pretty much fetishized her, and I thought it was necessary for us to understand who she was as a woman, where she came from. Even though she was born here, her parents were not.
Right.
So she was exposed to those elements of our culture through her parents. Even though separated from them, she got them. We know from the excellent work that is being done by Margaret Washington, Dr. Margaret Washington. I use her book, Sojourner Truth America, as the Bible about her. We know.
Say the book again. Sojourner Truth
America. That's the name of the book, and it's by Margaret Washington, PhD.
Okay, because I'm gonna be on it. I want the audience to be. They better be writing.
I want you to, and we know that. And until we started talking about it, nobody paid attention. We know that Sojourner Truth's father was Ghanaian, and we know that her mother was from Congo, Upper Congo, which now is Angola. So they brought those systems and practices and
all the cultural history
with them. And so she was exposed to that. So what we do during Pinkster is talk about those things that have become basically Western popular culture. When you talk about polyrhythms, food, all of that, we talk about that during Pinkster. What we also do is look at the fact that New York State and this Hudson Valley in particular fed the triangle slave trade, which people don't understand.
No,
because the wheat, the corn, all of that came from here.
Right.
We are also happy that we have with us on our team for this Chief Baba Neal Clark, who is in himself a history of the African drum. He, for 20 years, was Harry Belafonte's percussionist. And then on to play with the late great Randy Weston jazz icon, and at one of the African rhythms was Neal Clark, and he is our king, our Pinkster king, and has assembled a troupe of individuals that can tell that story. But we know, because to make it understandable for our young people, we bring in the rest of the story. That's why our tag is joy is an act of resistance, because our joy, which has never been able to been taken from us, and we exhibit our joy through our dance, through our song, through our food,
right,
through the way we.
They try to suppress it during slavery. They tried to suppress that.
Well, the drum, they took the drum away. Yes, they did. Right. Yes, they did. During the Stono Rebellion, they took the drum because that is the fuel that makes us not just survive but thrive.
Right. But thrive. Joy is the act of resistance. I love that. Is there a particular book on Pinkster?
There are several. And there's a Dutch book, and at the next break I will tell you what that is. Definitely. But I like Margaret because it's centered around Sojourner.
Sojourner,
yeah.
So I'm definitely. I hope the audience is picking up the notes on this. We definitely gonna get into that. Okay, we're gonna take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about what you're up to now and the cultural things that, we should be paying attention to during this time, right here on the Frequency in the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Back right here on the Frequency. I'm your host, Dee Barnes, and my guest, Greer Smith. We were just talking about Pinkster, Miss Greer Smith, or I'm trying not to call you Miss Smith, but Greer, come on and join us. Something that you made me think about earlier, we were talking, and heavily talking about Pinkster and Sojourner Truth. Everything seems to rely on Black women in particular, doing the heavy lifting. And you know that phrase, "We're not your mule." But it seems like everything still falls back on Black women. I mean, look at the work that you're doing and making sure that, you know, our history is being told and that the arts are being seen. And so what do you feel about, or how do you feel about that with Black women doing the work?
I feel privileged to be able to do it. And I also, because I've gotten that privilege and been and was able to call Auntie Shirley, and see my grandmother and my mother do the work that they've done, I feel a responsibility that I have to, keeper of the flame, I have to do that. Right. I have to, could no less do that, because we still, you know, what is that thing? For as far as we've come, we got a long way to go.
Right about that.
And so being able to be given what I've been given, the opportunities, the travel, the love, the support,
right,
that I've been given, I can do no less. And I'm particularly now worried a little bit about our girls.
What do you mean? What do you mean? What are you worried about?
I don't like what I see when I look at hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
And
speak on it, please.
I don't see enough. You talked about Sarah Vaughan.
Right.
You talked, you know, and I'm looking at, you know.
You brought up Aretha Franklin. We don't have the type of.
No, we don't have the Abby Lincolns, the Nancy Wilsons, and they were able to be wonderful and sensual and exquisite. Mm-hmm. And we didn't have to see all their body parts.
Right.
So I don't think our girls have given enough opportunities to see something else, because our senses are assaulted by the technology. The technology in many cases is not our friend.
Right.
When it comes to that. So the ability to produce content, I think, is a responsibility. Alternative content to what is so plentiful out here makes it hard. But
right.
those of us that still do it, you know, I'm here.
Mm-hmm. I hear you. I just have to push back on that for one moment. You don't feel that, you feel we're over sexualized, the young women, or do you feel like they have, you know, agency over their sexuality? Because that's the mindset.
That's the debate. That's the debate. And I come from, I've always had agency. I'm out of the quote unquote sexual revolution, as it was. You know, so this, I think, is a false equivalency. Ooh. I don't think that's a real conversation.
I love that you said that. No, continue. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm trying not to, you know, I don't want to get on my soapbox, but I am pro women. Mm-hmm. I am pro sex.
Right.
You know, don't get me wrong.
Yes.
But I think, like anything else, you become desensitized. Mm-hmm. I think our men have become desensitized because
the violence.
It's always in our face. It's always in their faces, and there's no requirement to treat with respect.
Right.
And also because I you know, I like sex, and sex is, you know, the mystery of it all, the nuance, the subtlety, you know.
There's none of that. There's none of that now. Everything's out and open, especially because, as you said, you mentioned technology. It's right there. It's easy access for everyone.
Yep.
Right. So what do you feel like? How do we get back to a sense of that? That, because I was just talking about this earlier about there's a sense of community that's lost. We don't have that, you know, where we're looking out for each other. I feel like that's lost.
I think we have to begin to use our power for good. This vehicle, this platform that you have is wonderful. We need to collectively look at all our platforms, those of us that share the same consciousness and like-mindedness, and that's how it begins. First, understanding that we do have a responsibility and seeing what we have in our hands to be able to make that change. If we don't, who will?
Right, exactly. I agree with you. Okay. Yes. You've given me a lot to think about, and you've definitely given the audience a lot to think about. And I know it's definitely a challenge because like you said, the false equivalency, though, that hit me really hard because that is the mindset of the youth today. Like they have agency. They own their sexuality, and we can be as nasty as we want to be, and we can do whatever we want type of vibe, because and I honestly I feel like we should be allowed to express ourselves like that. We should be allowed to present ourselves and own that. But I understand your point that it shouldn't be the only thing we see.
And that's what happens because we don't own anything.
I was just going to go there.
And money,
we're not controlling the narrative.
No, we do not.
Of our culture.
Exactly. We are being gentrified all over the place, and we do not own ourselves. We need to support Black Star Network.
Exactly.
And people like that. We don't have that. If we got to follow the money. When you follow the money and you see where it ultimately is, that's how you know who we see every day, who works. I can think of people whose names I don't know, who have talent is questionable, and I think about some young sister sitting in Oakland, California, sitting in Brooklyn, New York, sitting in North Carolina, who can really sing,
right,
and can't get a shot because they're not looking a certain way or saying or something, and that still exists. And those of us that are part of this cultural ecosystem, that have budgets that are under $1 million, we're working really hard,
right, to counter that message.
Absolutely.
To counter that message. That's what we need. We need more of it. We need to flood. We need to change the narrative. We need to change the frequency, because everything right now is low vibrational. So we need to raise the conversation.
Yes. I mean, we should be able to do a lot of things. We should be able to walk in Central Park in the middle of the night, but we can't.
We can't. No. And you mean that from being an African American, or you mean that from being a woman? Because
being a woman. Being a woman, forget about the Black part, but just being, you can't do some things because the society does not let that happen. When we get to a place where there's no confusion about who we are as women, as people, and our rightful place on the throne, we throw this queendom thing around all the time, but the throne is not there for us.
Right. You said we throw this queendom thing around. What do you mean?
Yes.
Queen.
Queen this, queen that, and it's not happening.
It's not happening. We're not acting like it. We're not being treated like it. We're not being protected.
No.
I mean, I wore Malcolm today because I was thinking about it. The most, protected, neglected, disrespected African American women, Black women in particular.
And we are still saving the nation at every turn.
At every turn, and saving ourselves in the process. We have to.
We have to.
We have to. All right, you guys, this conversation is getting hot. I love it. I love it. You brought up some great points, and I appreciate you for speaking on that, because we need to hear it. And I think, I'm so grateful that, Roland has given us this platform, a Black Star Network, to counter the message and, to counter the narrative and to speak up on it. And I'm so glad you did. I really appreciate you for that. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back on The Frequency.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We're going to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Your money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Back right here on The Frequency. I'm your host, Dee Barnes, and my guest, Greer Smith. Greer, Sister Greer, you made me think about it. Cultural activist, Greer Smith. And thinking about just that in general, like cultural activism, it's more relevant now than I thought about in the beginning. Like, I was like, okay, yes, but we need that. We need that. It's just like what you were saying about how we have to tell our stories and change and control, as much as possible the narrative. So what does cultural activism mean to you?
It means doing the work, telling the story, providing opportunities for our most talented folks to produce, perform, present.
Mm-hmm. Getting the message out there.
Yeah.
Getting it out there. Do you ever go ahead? I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say it's simply that. It's not any magical thing. Before it wasn't, right. We can think about a period of time when every street corner in every city, the brothers were out there in harmony,
right,
singing.
Mm-hmm. And no, it is important because there's a need for it. Like, there's such a need for it. It's like there's this void that's becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's missing generations, so to speak. We used to have that generational thing where we pass on the story. I mean, this goes back to Africa, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Passing on the stories of our ancestors. I think, like I was talking about, that sense of community is missing. And I think cultural activism definitely helps fill in that gap. How do we get the message out there, though, to more people? I mean, I know we have the platform like this, but the technology, we have to somehow use that too, because that's what the kids, I mean, for example, most of these kids are getting their information from TikTok. You know what I mean? These little apps and things of that nature. Nobody's picking up books anymore. And then, when they do want to pick up a book, the books are banned. You know what I mean? They got to go seek it out and find it. And just the misinformation that's happening also with technology too. You're not getting the full, you have to really be discerning with the information that you're taking in, because not all of it's accurate. So then we have the whole thing with AI. I mean, how do we keep the cultural activism going?
Merely by getting up every day and doing it. It sounds simplistic, but it is.
But it is.
whenever you gather, and that's what Pinkster did. And that's why it was so important for NASA to keep us from congregating, because they knew if we did, we would spread the word. I mean, Kingston had rule. I'm in Kingston, New York. Had rules, and every city did. First, it was more than 12 Black people could not gather. Then it got down to 5.
I mean, isn't that still the problem today? I mean, if we were gathered, all of a sudden the police show up.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's so important to tell the story, because it's the same story. I was in a meeting last Friday, a woman whose group started a dance company, and I used to book her 25 years ago. And she said, my God, we're having the same conversation. I said, yes, we are. For as much, that's the other thing that the technology has, and the few people that we have that are mega stars or whatever, and we're too involved with celebrity, we're having the same conversation because the focus is on them, but everybody else is left here at the bottom trying to figure it out. And we have that responsibility, and we have to continue to show up where we are.
Right. Well, I want to thank you for continuing to show up with your work, with spreading the message about, Pinkster. I'm getting ready to jump into that book, that Sojourner Truth book that you recommended for sure. I can't wait. Just thank you. Thank you for doing the work. I hope it's not thankless for you. I hope it's not, I know it's something you're passionate about. And you feel like you're on a mission, right? To do it,
Yeah. It comes out, I hate the stereotypical angry Black woman, but that anger is passion. Somebody pointed that out to me the other day.
Yeah, it's passion.
You have to be angry. Because if you're not, that's the fuel. It's like rocket fuel. It just propels you, keeps propelling you forward. And I would say to anyone that is anywhere, when you've got 5 people in front of you, tell the story.
There you go. Tell the story. But thank you for sharing your story with us here on The Frequency. It's been an honor to meet you. You've given me so much to think about, and you've given the audience a lot to think about too. And I hope everybody catches up with everything that you're saying. And definitely I'm going to go into more thinking about also what we touched on about our young women. I want to focus more on a couple more people I'm going to have on in regards to that, because I figured, let me start, like you said, right here, just keep doing the work and keep getting the message out there.
And thank you for keeping it going. And I send you blessings and love, and hopefully I'll meet you in person.
I can't wait.
Because, you've got a story, and we need you. We need your voice.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we need your voice too. And I thank you for your work, and I'm sending love and positivity to you. Woo! Another great conversation right here on The Frequency with my guest, Greer Smith, cultural activism. It's alive, y'all. It's alive and well. I hope you learned something. Okay. I hope we elevated you just a little bit today, and if not, catch us next time on The Frequency. We got you.